Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Unspoken Issues podcast. I think it's time to celebrate myself a little bit tonight. And we're going to be talking Cyberforce. That's right. If you have listened to any of the most recent shows in the past, there may have been a few shots thrown my way about being a fan of Cyberforce. We're going to revel in that. We are going to sit back and enjoy issue 0 all the way to issue 4 of our limited series of Cyberforce.
What a time for you to be alive.
I celebrated my daughter's birthday last night, and then it's like I'm having a birthday right now. This is great. Right. This is fantastic.
Look at you. Look at you. Who'd have thunk it?
Who would have thunk it? Cyberforce, Dean Compton, tell me about it.
Well, I picked Cyberforce, honestly, as a treat to you because I give you so much shit about liking Cyberforce. Every time there's always a Cyberforce joke. But one of the things you'll also notice a lot of the times when I talk about that is I'm like, but I like Cyberforce. Cyberforce is by no means bad. I don't know when we decided to start giving you crap about liking Cyberforce, but I was like, you know what? Like, we give him so much crap about it, and it's also, like, not a bad book. And it's a seminal book of the 90s, honestly, one of the founding sevens, OG, first run Image comics, I mean, hey, it should be looked at anyway on a podcast like this. You throw in the Walt Simonson 0 issue.
Yeah. I
think it's prime material for us to talk about, but also, we got to give you a little bit of a reprieve, right? Like, you take a lot, you're good-natured, you take a lot of jokes, you take this joke again and again. I know you're genuinely a fan, so let's talk about, Cyberforce, something you love, something I like, and something Derry knows.
Yeah, Derry. Weigh in here, buddy. Tell me about you and
Derry,
Cyberforce.
wait in here?
Boom.
I'm the new writer of Cyberforce.
I had not read these issues before. I love Marc Silvestri, but I came into his stuff a little bit later with like Witchblade and Darkness and stuff. So I had never read these issues before. I was familiar with the team. I read some of the later issues. They had a bunch of different volumes, so I was familiar with some of the characters and stuff. But this thing was a trip. I really enjoyed it. It's surprisingly dense with all the characters that it introduces, all the different plot lines that it introduces, and it actually manages to wrap up at least one storyline by the end, which I was surprised by. It's definitely a solid 5 issues. I feel like you could give this to someone who is a fan of things from the era, and they'd get something out of it. I will say, though, there is an appearance by the character of Pitt in the middle of this that doesn't seem to do anything or have anything to do with any. And I was just surprised. I was like, I didn't even know he was going to be in this. He doesn't do anything. He's just there.
I think he throws down with impact, maybe. I mean, or maybe they're about to go at it, and then. But yeah, just seeing Pitt and Silvestri's take on Pitt. I love it.
This book took me back. Issue 4's even got the chrome cover, but only Stryker's cyborg parts, which I thought was just the chef's kiss to this.
Yes, sir.
So. Gonna have to lay down $250 for this one.
Oh,
yeah. That's for $1.95.
Yeah, that's right.
Y'all want to know something? Money. I stole Cyberforce #1 from Walmart. For whatever reason, my Walmart had a lot of Image and Malibu titles on the newsstand, which apparently a lot of people, like, you didn't see these in places like Kroger or Walmart or drugstores. So mine had a lot.
No.
So I stole this Cyberforce, and I am glad I did.
Every time you talk about comics at Walmart, it blows my mind because that was not something we had in our region at all. I think there's places for magazines, but they rarely ever carried comics. Well, I'm glad you got your hands on it then.
Yeah, me too. I'm glad that nobody caught me that time as well. So I read #1 a lot. And eventually I picked up #4 from like a quarter bin or a 50-cent bin. But I swear to God, I never had 2 or 3. A friend at school did. At some point I've gotten them all like as an adult. But like as a kid, I had 1 and 4. It was really weird.
Right. Yeah. You're trying to probably fill in some blanks there. That's for sure. Because things definitely change a lot between 1 and 4. Let's go ahead. We'll break down our characters here, and then we'll talk about the synopsis of our first book. First book's going to be issue 0 that we discuss, but we definitely got to talk about Cyberforce, a kind of intro. Who makes up Cyberforce, Cyberdata?
Aren't you surprised that, like, there's not a character we're going to cover on your breakdown called Breakdown? That seems like the name of a character you would encounter at this Cyberforce, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. All right, so Cyberforce, created by Marc Silvestri. For first appearance of Cyberforce was Cyberforce #1 from October of 1992. Made up of, first on the list, Major Morgan Stryker, a former U.S. Army colonel, extensive combat training and mercenary capabilities. He has 3 arms on his right side,
Hell
and the
yeah.
normal amount.
Yeah.
One on the left. He is a weapons and military expert. I believe I grabbed that from imagecomicsfandom.com.
Yeah, and that also answers the question when we did Mars Attacks Image. Like, we're like, why does he get along so fucking well with this fucking colonel? Nah, I guess he knows how to talk to the army guys. He's a big army guy. I didn't know that or had forgotten or whatever. So that answers that question. So if you're listening to this for like continuity purposes, we just cleared that up, baby. You're welcome.
There you go. There you go. Next up is Heatwave. Dylan Cruz. Heatwave was a cybernetically enhanced mutant with the power to absorb and release ambient solar energy in the form of superheated plasma. Cyblade, energy projection, energy construction creation. Cyblade has the mutant ability. That's key, because this book has no problem using the word mutant. It has the mutant ability to generate blades of electromagnetic energy from her fingers, psionic powers as well. Trained in the arts of combat since she was a child, she is claimed to be one of the deadliest women in the world.
And I just want to emphasize, she's not Psylocke.
No, she is not.
Like, you might think, but she's not.
Right. There could be some parallels. The standout
part.
Yes, she does. That is true.
That's the difference.
One of the standout characters, probably one of the most popular members of Cyberforce, is Ripclaw. Robert Beresford, American Indian who has hands that can morph into metal claws, extremely bright, very skilled and powerful. Now, for the longest time, I didn't even realize, I mean, I've read these books a few times, but I always thought his claws were like straight up claws no matter what. I didn't realize he could morph them into hands. And I think, or like, you know, I should say like regular fingers. And I even think that this was something that I first had seen way after this first series, but then turns out I think it happens in this book when I was rereading it.
It happens at one point in one of these books, and I also did not realize it. Like he changes his hand into claws to like fight somebody or something, and I was like, oh, his fingers aren't always those big old fucking crane game claws. Like that's you know, the deadliest crane game operator in the world, Ripclaw. Let me ask this right now, because we'll talk about this character later too. Who do you like better, Ripclaw or Warblade? Because they do the same things, right? Like they're both just like, my fingers are sharp.
Yeah, man. I'll go with Warblade just because I'm a T1000 Mark. As far as their personalities go, I think, man, it's been a while since I've read some Wildcats.
Once again, and I'm really not knocking this as much as it may come across. Ripclaw's written like Wolverine. Okay. All right. Like the whole, like, you know, except they made him a Native American noble samurai, assassin, shaman instead of a, you know, Japanese noble samurai assassin guy. I mean, let's be honest. It's, you know, like Wolverine's always talking about the hunt and this, and that's what Ripclaw does. I'm not knocking as much as it sounds, because I think as time goes on, their personalities do deviate a lot more. But if you pick this up, if you just color this slightly differently and tell me it's an X-Men book, I just believe you. Yeah. And that's not as big of a knock as like I want as it sounds, honestly.
I hear you.
I like Cyberforce. In fact, I like Ripclaw better than Warblade for actually just because I know, because like, I can tell you Ripclaw's personality, but you're right. I have no idea. Warblade's got like a knot top and sharp fingers, and that's what I know about it.
Right.
I have to go with Ripclaw because I like Wildcats a lot, but Warblade has nothing to go on. And Ripclaw eventually, I don't know if this is followed up anywhere, but Ripclaw has an extended arc in the darkness when that character begins his face turn, and Ripclaw is like his I don't know, I guess his parole officer or some nonsense, but he's in the book way longer than you'd think. And I guess he's the closest thing that the Top Cow universe has to like a real superhero. So I'm a fan of that character. And yeah, the Native American stereotypes are heavy in the beginning, but I feel like they eventually settle out when the character becomes a little bit more, not an over the top stereotype, but Warblade, I couldn't tell you anything about him. My life depended on it.
I mean, I think when it comes to those stereotypes too, when you're reading this stuff, it's not as cringe as it could be because you can actually tell these guys were like trying to do the right thing. And, you know, some of it does come across a little cringy now, but it's not as bad as it could be, you know, just because they were trying like, oh, let's make it a strong Native American character. And so they go into some stereotypes, but you can tell that you can tell when you're reading the intention is good. It's not like they were just like, just throw that guy in a headdress and give him a tomahawk and let's call him, you know, Mr. Eagle or some bullshit, you know. Like, you know, I mean, like they're like, oh, this is what we've seen, this is what we know. There are some books when you read it, you're like, this is pretty cringe. I don't know if I could recommend this. This is cringe, but it wouldn't stop me from recommending Cyberforce.
This is one of the things Image did really well. I guess today we would call it like diversity or representation, but like, you know, Image was like, oh yeah, this guy's Native American. This superhero is black. All these superheroes are black. We're having female characters in everything. This one's gay, whatever. Move on to the next thing. There was no one to tell them you can't do that or you won't do that or it won't serve one market or the other. So I like the fact that Ripclaw is Native American, but you don't need to know that about the character. You know he's Wolverine, and if you like him, great. Go on to his miniseries and you'll learn his backstory. But for the most part, all the Native American aspects are just like the villains making fun of him. And it just kind of like, is like, well, I'm going to do the right thing and beat you up anyway. I was going to do that. So the fact that you're also a little bit of racist doesn't hurt.
Or him like being like the fawn and the bear, like that kind of thing, you know? So,
but that goes back to what you were saying about Wolverine. It's like,
right. No, exactly. Wolverine speaks in a very similar way. Yeah, that's why it's not as cringe as it could have been.
I was reading just in general today to refresh kind of where the storylines go, because I also haven't read the ongoing book, and I guess at one point he and Velocity hook up, and I thought that was a little weird because she's supposed to be his Kitty Pryde or his Jubilee or something like that. But again, I think it says she's like 16 here, so maybe in a couple of years, but I don't know. Still creep me out a little bit. Yeah.
Well, next on the list, Boomer O'Shea. Who's that? That's Impact. Large brawler of the group. What a name, Boomer O'Shea. I mean, that definitely fits. But yeah, Impact, large. I mean, just massive, big time fighter. He gets to throw down every once in a while. He's got like if I remember right, doesn't he have like kind of a surfer dude kind of vibe to him?
Yeah, he's got a surfer dude vibe to him.
Right. And some friends of Cyberforce, and I'm just bringing these up here because they're important to the story. There's Dr. Corbin, a doctor who once worked for Cyberdata. Now, Cyberdata is the big kind of like corporation that these guys are moving away from. Dr. Corbin was essential to Cyberforce's creation. They have since split off. Dr. Corbin's went with Cyberforce. John McNally, who is good with computers and specializing in medical applications. And then we have Chip McNally, John's son, who happens to be a computer genius.
You know that because he's got glasses and he's a kid in an action game.
Yeah. Did I bring up? I don't think I did. He built his own AI. Like
eventually, person. Yeah, right, yeah, Timmy.
Right.
Yeah,
Timmy, that's the name. Yeah. All right, let's talk Cyberdata. So Cyberdata is this large corporation, ambitions to take over the world. So, what corporation doesn't want to do that? Run by brilliant scientists who created advanced cybernetics technology and had employed this technology on captured mutants to create special hazardous operations cyborg, or S.H.O.Cs. The captured mutants have their mutant abilities enhanced with cybernetic implants and brainwashed using a brain box that rob them of their memories. They're definitely doing some shady practices.
But you also wonder why. Like, just sell these goddamn chips to the army. What's wrong with you? Like, you don't have to take over the world, just become like a super $1 trillion corporation and dominate that way. Like, what's this about? Yes. I always wonder that all the time with this stuff. I'm like, why don't you just like patent that?
Cyberdata is weird though, because there's an exchange between a guy on a monitor you don't see very clearly and whoever is running Cyberdata, which I picture to be like the Tyrell Corporation from Blade Runner. Like I got a lot of Blade Runner feels from that, where it's this big robotics company, maybe a little bit of Skynet, like, hey, we know things with the word cyber in it are going to be a big deal soon, and we don't really understand them, so they might be evil, so let's make the company evil. But there definitely seemed to be something else going on there, because the the two characters talk about how the latter led a fight against like presumably superpowered teams in like Bangkok and Tokyo and everything. Like it alludes to all these fights and these backstories that you don't see in this 4 issues. So yeah, Cyberdata wants to take over the world, but I don't think it's just because they're an evil corporation. It feels like it's a front for something else, and maybe we're not.
It's very reminiscent of when like Darkseid was calling Morgan Edge in the Force World shit. When you're like, who's this guy? What's going on?
Yeah. No, that's a great analogy. I was gonna say in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, where the Utroms or Krang or whatever, they always start a corporation so that they can hang out on Earth and like not be bothered because they make everyone money, but at the end of the day they're just trying to like get back to their home galaxy or dimension or whatever nonsense. Right. But you're absolutely right. It's the same thing where Darkseid's like, no, I literally don't care about this planet, but if you guys are able to run around and deal and look for the thing I want, then yes, I'll give you whatever weapons and resources you need because I already own an entire world. And it's the same thing here. Like you get the feeling like Cyberdata wants to conquer the world, and it has the mental control ability to do that, but not because it's a corporation, because it's a front for something else. And at least in these 5 issues, they don't necessarily get to what that is. But I was interested. I think for the longest period of time, I just assumed that Cyberforce worked for Cyberdata.
Same. I did the same thing.
Yeah.
I knew somehow they didn't. I knew that that they were split up. But wait, where did Super Patriot come from? Did he come from Cyberdata?
Oh, did he? Oh,
I can't remember now. You've read more Savage Dragon than I have, and he's very caught up with that. But like, I want to say that like he's somehow like caught up with Cyberdata.
I have never heard that before, but yeah, you might be 100% right. I mean, this early stuff is so combined. I mean, Warblade is in it, Pitt's in it. I think you see the Lord Emp, another Wildcats character from in the first issue, as a hobo, and there's a ton of references to Wildstorm in general because this was being published by Homage Studios, which is the Jim Lee thing. Right. So before Top Cow was a going concern, they're coming out under Jim Lee stuff. So yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if it was connected to everything else.
It turns out that like Super Patriot, like if you read like Alan Moore stuff, like in the World War II, like he was a regular guy. Then later he's the cyborg with the giant guns. Cyberdata apparently did that to it.
I hopped on the wiki for confirmation.
I remember. I think that takes place in like Die Hard goes to rescue him in Youngblood's strike file. So
Super Patriot was savagely attacked by his foes, with the Sharkman Mako biting off his limbs and much of his face. Left for dead, Super Patriot's body was taken by Cyberdata, a corporation of subversive scientists, and transformed into a powerful cyborg. So you mentioned Lord Imp, by the way. I don't know, and you may already know this, but that happens in Wildcats #1. But,
yeah, it absolutely is, because you're like, who's this random homeless person? And then he walks you through the Halo building as he turns back into his billionaire persona.
That's right. Talking about Cyberdata, I'm going to run down the villains here again. Like Dean said, these are a lot of people that you honestly don't need to know their names, but it's probably a good idea to to at least be able to put a name to a face if you need to. So we have Buzzcut, and how you're going to do that in an audio medium, I have no idea, but here we go. Buzzcut, who is Trent Peterson, large cybernetically enhanced man with massive saws he uses to kill his enemies. Then we have
I like that Striker idea where he's got like 3 arms on one side. What if I had 3 big old saws on one side?
Yeah. Can we make this more deadly? Okay, here we go. Then we have Psychotron, which is Megadeth song. Psychotron, Jack Kruver. Not a whole lot is known about Psychotron's abilities. He appears to be able to build up and project enormous energy blasts.
Got a luchador feel.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Then we have Killjoy, Brenda Luz, an extremely skilled assassin who is quick on the draw and her feet. Then we have Megawatt. Real name's unknown, appears to be made of some sort of energy and able to emit blasts of that energy to shock people. And this guy we're going to get introduced here in issue 0, Ace of Blades. Ace of Blades. So he's the newest member of Cyberdata here in this 0 issue. He's a skilled fighter who is well versed in the use of blades. Believe it or not, Ace of Blades is good with
Man,
blades.
every time I read his name, y'all's the metal people here. I just start going Motorhead on. I'm like, Ace of Blades, Ace of Blades. But
That's
the real
gotta
Ace
be.
of Blades is the guy from the Carnage concert. He was able to sneak that in, right? Like, that's Ace of Blades. You can't just get that anywhere. And then to be ready to go, just ready to kill somebody on a moment's notice. That's the real Ace of Blades.
Then we've got Misery. Lydia O'Rourke, a very brief appearance. Misery is a powerful telepath with the ability to switch Cyberdata operatives into ruthless killers. I believe she's got a way of connecting with that brain box that's in there, and then she's able to kind of like just turn them immediately into like just murderous people.
But she's goddamn psychopath too. So
yes, she is.
I think she's more important in the ongoing. I can remember like house ads with her like face and stuff, but she doesn't do anything here.
Then we have Saburo Kamada, leader at Cyberdata, who will stop at nothing to please his boss, Emil Zadrock. He's the shadowy Cyberdata creator pulling strings of Cyberdata's Saburo Kamada. Yeah. Remember
First
them all.
off, Saburo sounds too much like Sabaro for me. Like I was saying, I was reading this and I said it out loud, and Emily was like, "Why are you talking about Sabaro?" And I was like, "Oh my god, yeah, it does." So bad break for him.
Correct, to be associated with one of the worst pizza joints ever. Then we have, I like Little Caesars, folks. I like Little Caesars.
That's a war crime. Go on.
These guys are shaking their head. And finally, Mother May I. More will be revealed about Mother May I as we get into the ongoing series. But right now, she is currently working for Cyberdata and has the power to tell if someone is lying and has deep ties to the mutant community. We do have a few other people that show up here. Stormwatch is mentioned, I believe. Backlash shows up, who's a member of Stormwatch. Flashpoint and Nautica, also members of Stormwatch, show up here. So just kind of, be aware, though. There are a ton of characters that show up throughout this series. Here it is, issue 0. So let's run down the creative team. Looks like dropping in September of 93 between the end of the 4-issue series, which ended in July of 93, and the ongoing series that begins in November of 93. So they drop in issue 0. Art by Walt Simonson. Plot by Marc and Eric Silvestri and Walt Simonson. Script by Walt Simonson. Letters by John Workman. Colors by Joe Chiodo. Here we go. In this 0 issue of Cyberforce, we meet our team as they are stopping a Cyberdata theft. Cyberforce prevents the theft, but Cyberdata escapes. However, one of the villains, the Ace of... I almost did it. I almost fucking did it. The Ace of...
a hard song to play on Guitar Hero or Rock.
Oh, yeah. The Ace of Blades is left behind and captured by Cyberforce. Recovering in a hospital, I call him Ace, we're friends. Ace realizes he has felt better than he has in a long time. Stryker explains that it is due to the Cyberdata chip they removed from his brain. He tells of how most of Cyberforce at one time worked for Cyberdata, all getting cyber robotic upgrades, but also having the implant. This implant allowed Cyberdata to flip a switch, turning the victim into a ruthless, bloodthirsty killing machine. If it were not for the efforts of Dr. Corbin, who removed the chip, then they would all either still be working with Cyberdata or captured or even dead. Stryker tells Ace of the time he was rescued by Cyblade with the assistance of members of Stormwatch. After that, Cyblade, Heatwave, and Stryker decided to create Cyberforce. The story ends with Ace agreeing to quit, and while Stryker walks out of the hospital, a Cyberdata helicopter appears and obliterates the wing that Ace was in. Enraged, Stryker pulls his pistol. This is amazing. Stryker pulls his pistol and shoots the helicopter at the exact spot needed to make it explode. This incident only strengthens Stryker's resolve to put an end to Cyberdata. So there you go. That is issue 0. A nice little introduction, although, like I said, it took place in between the 4-issue series and the ongoing, but it does kind of give you the foundation of what Cyberforce is fighting for. So, all right, let's go ahead and let's open it up here. Dean Comp, to start us out here, buddy. What are your thoughts?
I remember buying this. I bought this off the shelf.
Okay.
In the comic book store. I remember I got a bunch of money because it was the summer that my dad died. And so when you're a kid and your parent dies, you get a bunch of stuff. It's wild. And it's terrible. But like, you
Right.
also have to just get the stuff because, you know, what are you going to do? So like, I bought it, and I remember the first thing that attracted me to it was that like it says Cyberforce 0 in like the Cyberforce lettering, like spelled out. I was like, that's pretty neat. Like I said, I mean, the miniseries came out first, so I had seen Cyberforce prior. I love Walt Simonson, and you know, he does the script and all the full art on this, so I really liked it. You know, I mean, I don't know that Zero issues always give you as much of an origin as like they should. Like, so this is really just like a story of a thing that happened
Really
to
it
Stryker
is.
at the beginning of cyber, you know, of his career with Cyberforce or what have you. But at the same time, you're like, well, what about Heatwave? What about Impact? What about these other guys? You know, I mean, like, how is this a Cyberforce 0? Also, it's really funny when like Impact, like Ace of Blades goes up against Impact, who's like 14 feet tall and weighs 8,000 pounds. This guy's like, I'm good with blades. Like, yeah, we fucking know, bro. And then Impact's like, that's a cool name. Doesn't mean you're ready for the big leagues. And I just respect Impact so much for being nice to this dweeb because it is not a good name. It takes way too long to say. Like Ace of Blades, that's too much, you know? I mean, like, just, I know you can't be Blade because of Blade Vampire Hunter, but like Ace of Blades is stupid. Just stupid. It's what? It doesn't roll. Did you call me a hater?
You're a hater. You're a hater.
I'm not a hater. It's just,
You're a hater.
I'm telling it like it is. I'm telling it like it is. And I like plenty of bad names. That one's just really, really bad. It's really neat to see Warblade in this, and I didn't know he was connected to Cyberdata whatsoever. I guess that's explored or not later on with the Wildstorm stuff. I love Stormwatch. I'm a big Stormwatch fan. So this is like Stormwatch Prime, you know? So like, you know, it's interesting to see them. Like, I remember they first appeared like Stormwatch 0, and there was this big story about what had happened to them and all this. And so it was cool to see them Flashpoint just like shoot eye beams. What's the difference between him and Cyclops? He's changed direction. There's 2 of them. All zip-de-dooing around his head and shit. But it is cool when like these guys like try and take the federal agents and Stormwatch, who keeps being referred to as a federal agency, even though they're like a United Nations thing.
Yeah, they're the UN.
They're like, try doing this to us. Which also leads me to ask this question. In Stryker's mission and in the mission where they wind up fucking around with the Stormwatch, they're trying to shut down drug dealers. Why? What the fuck does Cyberdata fucking care? Is this just like corporate citizenship trying to look cool, or a bait and switch? We're actually bad guys. But like, I have no idea why they're sending goddamn super jacked up mutant cyborg steroid fuckers to like deal with like drug deals.
Yeah,
you know, like
I have
that's
no idea.
like why would a corporation do this? You know, it's kind of, you know, I don't understand. Most of it though, like, it's a straightforward story. I like Dr. Corbin. You know, I like Cyblade's role in it. You're not going to go wrong with Walt Simonson. No. And also, as weird as this is going to sound, you can shoot down a helicopter with a pistol. But it's not like you shoot it to where it explodes in the air. What usually happens is and this is like a 1 in like 75 million chance.
What is the odds?
I don't know, but like what you're really trying to do is hit the back rotor so that it spins out of control. Like this guy, he just shoots it and it blows up. It's like he's Rambo and he had like a fucking like explosive arrow. You're like, that's not how that works. But if you shot the rotor at the right spot, helicopters aren't very like, you know, stable. So if you take out that thing, you know, like you can just mess it up for a minute, you can make this thing spin out of control. So that's not impossible.
I'll believe it. I'll believe it.
But like, here's the thing. That's usually not the plan. You're like, hold on, I'll grab my pistol and then I'll shoot down this helicopter real quick. You really prefer to do something else. And again, like you're saying, it's like a 1 in, you know, 75 million trillion. Can it happen? Yes. Are you going to do it? No. You know, I mean, it's, you know, but he's got 3 arms, so, you know, everything he does is 3 times as good.
3 times as cool?
Yeah, 3 times as cool. You're not going to get the house in the burbs that they were talking about. This is very like cop buddy movie feel too, as well, in some ways. But all in all, a fun Stryker romp. I mean, it's weird to call it Cyberforce 0. It's a Stryker story for the most part. You see Stormwatch, you see Warblade. It's a lot of fun. A lot of guys jumping around. Ripclaw's in it at the beginning. He's really a big fan of jumping. He jumps and he's got his arms stretched out. He's ready. He knows what's going on here. He knows what we're here for.
I mean, the balls on Cyberdata to just blow up a hospital or part of it.
Like killed like 1,000 people to get this one guy. What the fuck are we doing?
Right. There could have been an easier way to do this. I think what I like coming out of this is it definitely helps me understand, okay, now I understand that Cyberdata is an evil corporation. We got the idea of these chips that are going inside their brains and what Cyberdata is trying to do and why.
Should they have let that kid look at that as much as they did? Like, it's just a striker blowing somebody's head fucking apart on that chip, and this kid's like, look, here it is. It's like 7.
He is. He's pretty young. But this is our first understanding that Warblade and Ripclaw are probably associated in some way before Killer Instinct hits, which I think that happens in the first 2, maybe I could be wrong. It happened, the prologue happens in Cyberforce Volume 2, Number 1.
I don't know the storyline Killer Instinct, and every time you say it, I'm just thinking of like the fighting game.
Yeah.
Saberwolf, Jago, we're doing
Fulgore.
this. M Combo, was that his name?
No, that wasn't his name.
TJ Combo.
TJ Combo.
M Bison Street Fighter.
Let me tell you something. That is probably, for me, the top soundtrack of as far as video games go. Yeah. You can say Mortal Kombat as much as you want, but I'm telling you, throw on the Killer Instinct soundtracks, especially from the 90s. I had that shit on CD at one point.
I'm with you.
Oh,
yeah. It came with the game, I think. I had it too.
I had to have.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful, beautiful soundtrack. And they did an update to it. Anyway, I've been listening to it on Spotify past few summers.
Video game music for me, like my favorites are I think Streets of Rage 2 and Mega Man 2 and 3 are just amazing.
Ooh. I know we've had a discussion about Mega Man before.
Yeah.
I know that you dig Mega Man.
I don't miss an opportunity to talk about Mega Man.
I've got a great YouTube. There's a YouTube site or a YouTube channel out there that does nothing but 8-bit and 16-bit live. It's kind of like a radio station, Rhythm and Pixels. Anyway, I'll throw that on while I'm working, and it's just 8-bit. And there's a lot of Rockman, not Mega Man. They play the Rockman.
Oh,
nice. Which is, I'm sure it's the same thing. But anyway, it's funny because
3, especially the Famicom version, is also fire.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
I'll have to check out. I remember playing Killer Instinct. I remember liking the music, but I don't.
Oh, dude.
I remember liking it, but I just never like listen to it.
You find the soundtrack and just listen to it from beginning to end and realize like. Yeah, I mean, I should say the CD. I don't. What you're getting on the CD is not what you're getting on the 16-bit SNES cartridge. But regardless, it's still good. Stormwatch showing up was great. I loved seeing that. I'm a big Stormwatch fan as well. Yeah, and we get a lot of characters that are going to be showing up in the ongoing and in this that previously showed up in 1 through 4. But there you go.
I wish we learned more about Impact. He looks so cool. What's his real name? Bob O'Reilly or something? Like, I don't know. Like, he's a cool guy. Like, why did we learn more about
Bob O'Reilly?
It's Bob O'Reilly. That's
definitely Bob O'Reilly.
Yeah.
It's Boomer O'Rice something. I don't remember.
Boomer O'Shea.
Boomer O'Shea. Oh, it's Bob O'Reilly to me. That's my headcanon now.
Yeah.
They fucking sing Teenage Wasteland and like Impact back there. And Raising the Roof. Fucking hell yeah, he's there.
Oh, man. That's hilarious. All right, Derry, tell me about your thoughts on issue 0 here.
I would like to say that if Stryker ever did move to the burbs and he was my neighbor and I saw him with 3 arms on one side and a metal face, I would not mention any of those things. I would welcome him to the neighborhood. But if he kept that ponytail, I would say, you might want to think about getting rid of that.
Something's got to go here. It's either 2 of the arms or 1 of the ponytail.
It's weird how you were so quick to be like, listen, I'm not a cyberist. Okay. Somebody's being very defensive out of nowhere.
I do have a question about Morgan Stryker that I have not been able to answer in 30 years. Is he a mutant that naturally has 4 arms in weird places, or are 2 of those arms completely robotic? Do we have any idea?
I
believe he is a mutant. I read this on some wiki today, and he was born with the arms.
Oh,
I think that's the case. But you can probably find another wiki that tell you something different.
I mean, listen, I
Let's
know that
ask Eric Silvestri, the real mastermind behind all this.
I couldn't find anything about him other than the book that you linked me to earlier today in our chat. I had never heard of him before. I did not realize that Mark had a brother who helped him script. I knew all the early guys had like, writers that they kind of pulled in and said, hey, Stan Lee up this thing. But I had never heard of Eric Silvestri before.
They're like, hey, Brandon Choi, Stan Lee, you can top him.
Exactly. Brandon Choi, Dave Wall.
Get in here, Brandon. Stan who?
Yeah. Well, I mean, listen, that's what Stan did, right? Like, Kirby, Ditko, Ayers, all these other guys bringing these great pages. And he's like, all right, I'm going to make this shit sellable. Like, that's what he did. He was an editor. He was good at it. So,
Yeah. But my point is, that like, while we can have a long debate about Stan Lee and Jack Kirby and have done so and did Ditko, I do think Stan Lee brought a lot more to the table than Eric Silvestri. No offense.
Sure. Of course.
No offense. I don't mean anything bad. George Brett's a better baseball player than Vaughn Hayes. What the fuck you want me to do about it?
I don't think Eric Silvestri is out there trumpeting, "Hey, I'm better than Stan Lee."
No, but if I was him, I'd be like, I'm better than Mark, though. He got a lot of breaks. Like, I would say that about
no. Oh, absolutely.
The other thing is, I was very, very confused because I had never read Zero before we did it for this podcast. And I read it first thinking that it was, I don't know, like a preview issue or something. I didn't realize that it came later. So I'm reading this and I'm like, wait a second. Did Walt Simonson create Cyberforce? And in 30 years, I never realized that. And then I got to the end and I started issue 1 and I realized it came later and I was like, oh. And then I was kind of thinking through the situation and it's like, all right, all the Image miniseries, as far as I know, did very well financially. And Silvestri turned around and was like, I want to work with Walt Simonson. I want him to do whatever. And for Walt Simonson to show up and be like, I will script, draw, and whatever else your characters, like that must have been a huge deal. Like
he actually writes about that on the first page. Like if you're reading Cyberforce Zero, Marc Silvestri has like a little editorial, and he's like, the 3 guys I really like the most were like Jack Kirby, John Buscema, and Walt Simonson. I probably like Simonson the most. The idea, literally, what you're saying that he's doing my characters is just a mind fuck in a way, And yeah, all these books did incredible, and everybody kind of did that, right? Except maybe like like Valentino wound up working with like Steve Bissett and Alan Moore and Rick Veitch, and then Todd brings in Gaiman and Frank Miller and Alan Moore and Dave Sim, and Jim Lee gets Chris Claremont to come in. I don't know if Eric Larson brought anybody in like that. I guess Keith Giffen to an extent would count.
Well, they let Kirby do Phantom Force.
That's right. They did. They published Kirby's Phantom Force.
Yeah. So I mean, they definitely tried to spread the wealth around. I mean, these issues, the tin-plated soldiers, they're even dedicated to Kirby. Like they definitely wore their influences on their sleeve, and they tried to spread the wealth around, which is something I always appreciated about G1 Image. But yeah, I mean Simonson though, really, like he does this comic. Like this is an issue of Thor. This is like 30 solid pages. Like this is great. So this is nice to see very early on. And it doesn't seem like Simonson's phoning it in. Like there's backgrounds, there's splash pages, there's his dynamic stuff. Like I think just structurally, it's probably the best out of the 5 we read, just because the guy's been doing this forever.
Yes.
I mean, at this point, he had already done his legendary Thor run and most of the crossovers with the X-Men that his wife was overseeing. So, I mean, it's a great issue. He also plays fast and loose with the continuity, which I like. It's like, all right, I want to show how evil the bad guys are. I'm going to have them blow up an entire hospital, and that's going to push Stryker to be an even better hero. If that is even his arc. He always seemed very low-key to me. Being a career military.
Well, he might not have come up with that, too, though. He didn't plot it. This is plotted by the two Silvestri. So he may have been like, oh, maybe they use a sniper, and they're like, he blows the whole fucking thing up. Well, he's not gonna be a fucking handicapped person walking around with there. Also, I thought it was funny when you were like, I thought maybe that Walt Simonson created Cyberforce, and in my head I'm like, yeah, it's a goddamn Star Slammer spinoff.
Right. Man, I don't know.
But no. It's just when you said that, like the first thing I thought was like, what if it was? What if it was a Star Slammer spinoff?
I try to keep an open mind, man. Every once in a while I'll look something up and I'll be like, oh, that was created by that person. I didn't even know they were in the industry at the time. So
right.
There was like 30 seconds here. I was like, did did Walt Simonson create this team and I just never realized it? And then, you find out that's not the case. But again, it's a nice surprise to see such an absolute legend show up to do what is essentially the 5th issue of this new team, which again at the time probably seemed like a big deal. I read that they were supposed to get their own cartoon. You had sent us the picture that they had, an action figure line or something.
Got an action figure line, yeah.
Yeah, they were supposed to be the next big thing, and why not? Savage Dragon had his own show, Spawn had his own show, Wildcats had their own show. It's like, why wouldn't you think that this would follow suit, especially with the copious use of the word mutant? So again, I was happy to see Simonson on it. You get exactly what you pay for, and honestly, if he had been given a few more issues, I would have picked them up at this point. I kind of wanted to see what else he would do.
Well, I was reading the Marc Silvestri interview, just kind of skimming through it yesterday in Road to Independence, the Incredible Tomorrow's publication. It's out of print. Print wise, but you can order it digitally, and they get a free plug. I'm great friends with a lot of guys over there. Keith Dallas, Michael Urey. Great work, can't recommend them enough. And Silvestri said that apparently that Cyberforce toy line cost some Mattel exec its job, because the idea, you have the toy line, the cartoon's coming out, there's going to be a big push. Well, the cartoon dematerializes, there's no big push, but they've made all the tooling. So they've got to just put Cyberforce out there with basically nothing but a comic book to support it, a comic book that was hard to find on the newsstands, that wasn't aimed at 8-year-olds. It died like a fucking, fish 50 miles from water. What the fuck are you going to do about it? You know what I mean? And so apparently it cost that exec his job because there wasn't as much synergy as there should have been. Tidbits, I bring them.
All right, let's talk about the 10 Men of War. We're getting into our first two of the first 4 issues here of the limited series. So this released, boy, I don't know. I don't have it in front of me.
Before we start with this, let me ask you guys, did either of you pick up Cyberforce Zero off the shelf? I know you didn't, Derry, but no. Did you get it, Jesse?
I'm certain I have it. I think I have it, and
okay.
It's got to be my brain because I don't recall reading it. I'm sure I read it. I was just curious.
I'm really interested when we tell our stories when you remember getting a book. That's all.
Right. There is a lot of memories that I have of reading comic books at my grandma's, and Cyberforce #1 was one of them. You talk about some of the cards that you were picking up. Grandma's house lived walking distance from a 7-Eleven, and so I would go down there and grab. They were selling Marvel cards. They were selling the Marvel series cards, and I was buying those, take them back home, take them back to Grandma, sit at the kitchen table and open it up and read everything. And after I played a few rounds of Time Killers in Street Fighter 2, and then I think it was Time Killers. Was that the one where it was like a Mortal Kombat ripoff? Anyway, horrible game.
Yeah, that sounds right. I mean, there's a whole bunch of them, so that's for SNES drunk to tell you.
Good old SNES drunk. I remember that for sure.
Those cards at 7-Eleven, to tell you how ubiquitous this shit was. I lived in Southside fucking Arkansas, and we had a little store called Southside Grocery, and at one point, I could buy cards from them. I could get the Marvel Regular Universe cards, Fleer, X-Men Ultra, Marvel Flair, Marvel Masterpieces, and I think the Spider-Man cards all at this store.
All at a grocery store.
Yeah, like a tiny, it's like, they had like a butcher spot and everything. It was a grocery store proper, but it's the size of 2 houses. This is and it's nowhere Arkansas. You're talking 2 hours from Little Rock, 3 hours from Memphis.
Those things have to
5
fight
hours from St. Louis. That's how prevalent these things were, and that's what made a lot of us fans. We talk about getting comic books back in places. I think you got to start with the cards somehow, and I think you've got to make cards that are like $3 a pack and somehow get them out there and make it meaningful. I don't know what that looks like or how that works. I know GameStop does a little thing like that, but you've got to get them into fucking the 7-Elevens. You've got to get them onto the shelves at those little mom and pop stores, and then people will be like, "Oh yeah, U.S. Agent. I saw him on the movies. Now I have his card. Oh, here's a comic book. Oh, here's a comic book that he's in. I should go get it." I think that's the only real way to get superheroes back in front of people in in a newsstand setting these days. Other than Avengers fruit snacks and shit are here, and they're here to stay.
Oh,
those are so good.
Yeah, they are.
So good.
All right. So our artist, Marc Silvestri, writer, Eric Silvestri, lettered by Mike Heisler, colored by Joe Chiodo. The 10 Men of War parts 1 and 2. October of 92, first issue drops. Here we go. To set the tone for the world that Cyberforce takes place in, imagine a world like ours, specifically New York City. However, there has been tension among the human and mutant communities for a while now. Add to that the recent political run of one mutant by the name of Perry Bluestone, who has eyes on the seat of mayor of New York. Bluestone has hired Cyberforce for protection, and he needs it as the story opens with a foiled assassination attempt on his life, introducing us to the heroes of this story. We are then introduced also to the young mutant girl Velocity, who has the power to run at superhuman speed. Being chased by a Cyberdata strike team that is led by a sharpshooter called Ballistic, Velocity is able to escape with the help of Cyberforce's Ripclaw and Heatwave. This news displeases Cyberdata's shadowy leader Zadrock, who compels the acting head of Cyberdata, Saburo Kamada, to find and capture Velocity at all costs. Meanwhile, Velocity is taken back to Cybertech to heal up, where she meets Chip and his creation, a young boy by the name of Timmy, that is an AI supercomputer. However, her rest is cut short when Ballistic and other members of Cyberdata's superpowered team track her there, looking to take her in. Velocity attempts to escape, but gets a blade in the leg, stopping her cold. Luckily, Cyberforce shows up, and we have a battle on our hands. As the team engages in a large conflict, Megawatt gets the drop on Stryker and knocks him unconscious. Heatwave is able to grab Velocity, and Cyberdata has to retreat. Sometime later, Velocity is feeling more at home with her friends in Cyberforce, and while out grabbing some snacks with Timmy, the two run afoul of a team of superpowered thieves named Splitzkrieg, Wildfire, and Slam.
Wait, I got a question about this. Is Slam Black Anvil?
I have the same goddamn question.
Right. Okay. All right.
I mean, I don't think so, but fuck, they gotta be related.
They look alike. They sound alike. They're both smoking that cigar. They feel like
the only difference I can see is, like, from what I understand of Black Anvil, like, he wouldn't back down from God with a switchblade. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know, this guy gives up pretty quick.
Yeah, right.
That's the only difference I can see between the two of them.
Oh, Splitzkrieg, Wildfire, and Slam.
Splits fucking.
He was my favorite character in this entire book, and I want to see a spin-off featuring him. So for anyone who hasn't actually read this comic, Splitzkrieg is a set of Siamese twins, both of whom are about 7 feet tall. They are connected at the waist. One has a thick German accent and a swastika tattooed on their face, and the other one sounds like every terrible BBC British actor. Like, no context is given for why this is the case, why they even get along, or what, if any, superpowers they have. They are my favorite characters in all of comicdom, and I want them to make their grand, triumphant return. All I'm saying is Top Cow still publishes comics to this day, and if they brought those characters back, I would buy at least one issue.
If they brought those characters back, I would set up a blockade around their offices.
Oh, man. It doesn't make any sense. The character makes no sense whatsoever. Like, you're sitting there thinking, like, oh, well, certainly it makes sense that they were... Why does he have a different accent than the other one? Like, no idea.
I will say this, though. You look at these guys, this guy in particular, and, like, man, they're not afraid to try stuff.
No, they are not.
You know, like, hey, maybe this will work, maybe it won't, but fucker, you're going to remember Splitzkrieg, sadly. It's utterly unnecessary. It's just, honestly, I would really like the character if it wasn't for the swastika.
Swastika's all.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know.
They can have the same name. One can act German, one can act English. They argue with each other. I like Too Bad from Masters of the Universe. I like the two-headed monster on Sesame Street trying to fucking put the word, like, welcome together, not getting along, figuring it out. It's an adventure every time. But, like, I don't want to see, like, you know, why is he a swastika? What's going on here? This is unnecessary. You know what I mean? Especially for the guy to just be, like, some weird henchman in a bounty hunting club. What the fuck is this? Like, I'd have no problem with Nazi villains, and I don't have a ton of problem with Nazi imagery on those villains, but like I think it's weird when just some guy in a group has a fucking swastika on him. But the times were different then, honestly. At that point, like you can't make a satirical joke about Nazis now because they're everywhere, and like in a way that they just weren't in 1992.
Right. The thieves were hired by Cyberdata and had just stolen some very important data disks when they nearly hit Timmy with their van. He's supposed to be this most advanced AI, but goes out running after a ball into a busy street. Just putting that out there.
Well, he's still a kid.
All right. Sure. Timmy nearly gets hit by their van. Velocity gets involved, and sensing she may be of some importance, the team decides to kidnap both Velocity and Timmy. Once all in the vehicle, they begin to head down the road where they run right into Cyberdata's shock troop, Psychotron. Meanwhile, things are moving forward. Meanwhile, things are moving forward for Stryker as he is approached and agrees to a covert op where he will get close to Mother May I in order to keep an eye and possibly quell some plans she has for a bloody mutant rebellion. So that is issues 1 and 2 of Cyberforce. I'll start, and I want to get you guys' thoughts on this. I mean, to me, for some reason, I felt like, okay, Image is doing its own thing. I know that they have definitely been criticized for appearing to be a carbon copy of some of the teams of Marvel at the time. That's something that's been said. But I really
said it on this podcast.
It's been said, folks. I don't think this crossed the line for me, but it's interesting that they started using the word mutant in this book. It just felt weird because I don't think you see the word mutant being used anywhere else other than in Cyberforce, at least as far as I know. So in Image. Now, you feel free to correct me.
DC, there's some talk of mutants, like Captain Comet is a known mutant, and there's a few other guys. There's X-mutants over at Malibu. It's not like it was taboo, but like this is using a very common X-Men trope in that like we're using mutant rights and mutants as an allegory for minority rights and a minority, and a lot of times they don't really do it that overtly, although like I said, there are some mutants in other superhero continuities, for lack of a better term. I did find it weird that it was so prevalent here, for sure. Also, is that Mayor's mutant power that he's just blue?
Blue stone has blue skin.
Also, he's he's running for mayor of New York City, right? And he used to be a senator. And I'm like, they're like, oh, this town's not ready for that. I'm like, if he's a senator in New York, this town fucking put him there. He's going to win this fucking election. You know how New York politics work?
Yeah, can I just say that him having blue skin, 1992, 93, fine, whatever. But like, him having blue skin, I don't even really think anyone here would care. I'm just putting that out there.
I'm saying they already did. They already elected him senator.
Yeah. Assuming he was senator from New York, it's a big state. But they kind of played fast and loose with a lot of this stuff. Like, again, I'm not saying that every comic book has to be the most well-researched thing of all time, but they would throw out a lot of tidbits. And I'm like, I know y'all didn't have the internet back then, but I don't know. Your reach may have exceeded your grasp.
Well, it's all right, though. Our reach exceeds our grasp every fucking episode on this show.
Terrible 90s comics basically raised me. So, no, I love them unquestioningly.
Back to your points, though, Jesse. But yes, you're right. It's odd that the mutant hammer gets, comes down so hard in this.
My whole thing is he's sitting next to Rob Liefeld as he's drawing all this. And is he just like, hey, you created the Mutant Liberation Front, right? That's a great name. How many letters in that name do I have to change before I can make it my own thing? And is Rob just sitting there like, oh, call them a group. Yeah, that's fine. You'll be good. Don't worry about it. Oh, you also have a guy with 4 arms? All right, just put one of the arms on the other side. Again, That's fine. That'll skirt copyright. That's why I never got sued by DC for my Titans fanfic.
Titans fanfic. Wow.
That's what I call Youngblood.
I know what you were talking about. I know what you were talking about, Derry. You don't have to Derry explain this to me.
Barry, explain.
I mean, I get why you're saying it. I mean, it was literally like a Titans proposal at one point. And so, you know, I mean, it's just, I feel like you just shot an ant with a bazooka. That was a heavy shot. I respect it.
I'm not a big Titans guy, but I mean, you know, you could take the George Perez run and you could go through and you can circle what Liefeld was reading as he was sketching out the exterminators or Youngblood or whatever the heck they were called on a given day. And, you know, he doesn't even own them anymore. So I hope whoever does is going to, you know, bring them back. Yeah, I don't know who that is, but I hope they bring them back in 2024. Man, the blood is back, guys. The blood is back.
Fucking Christ.
Next
this isn't a podcast about Youngblood or how much Derry hates Youngblood. It is a podcast about Cyberforce. We're here to celebrate Jesse's love of Cyberforce. We have to get back on track.
I would like to say, for the record, I do not
forever hold your peace.
I do not hate Youngblood. I like Youngblood very much, mostly because of Alan Moore writing it. I just don't care for Rob Liefeld. But if Rob Liefeld allowed me to get the Alan Moore Supreme run, the Alan Moore Youngblood run, the Alan Moore Glory issues, and all of that led to America's Best Comics. So him existing allowed for a couple of good things, and that's important.
Served a purpose.
Yeah,
I like Cable.
Yeah, sure. Cable's great.
You know,
I feel like you were about to be like his Terminator fanfic.
I could go on all night about the different places that Rob Liefeld took his stuff from, but that's not what this is about. This is about celebrating Marc Silvestri, who I do like very, very much.
Yes. I will tell you that Rob Liefeld has said Marc Silvestri is one of the best artists that went as part of the Magnificent Seven.
Todd says Silvestri was the best. It's really hard to argue that.
Right. Okay, my next note is more acronyms than you can shake a stick at. I mean, I don't know how many times you get a little editorial bubble that pops up to explain to you, okay, S.H.O.C stands for this, and this stands for that, and this means this, and this means that. Got plenty of that happening in this book. The one thing I had listed here was like Velocity in her nightmares was pretty disturbing. Some of the stuff that was going through her head, she was, as she was sleeping, she was abused as a child, and boy, was that rough. That was kind of a rough few panels when you're looking at that. Derry, I'll throw it to you first here, man. You got any notes for issues 1 and 2?
I want to take a moment to just point out the fact that this comic is filled to the brim with new characters. Now, they're not all great, but I love the fact that every time you turn the page, there's some new potential action figure just coming out of the woodwork. And I think that's really important. There are more characters in here than there is space to introduce them all. I mentioned before that, you know, other characters from Image and Homage and Wildstorm all show up too. Like, this is really a celebration of all things new. And I think that's great. And I wish more books today did that as opposed to just remixing the stuff that had come before. So I really did appreciate that. I love that a lot of the characters are mostly just cool visual gimmicks. The character of Buzzsaw is great because he shouldn't work on any freaking level, but Silvestri put him on that page and tried to give him an arc as best he could. I thought that was great. Even the characters that you think are going to be ridiculous, like obviously Cyblade is drawn in a very particular way, but like Ballistic, who is the female antagonist, I actually like her a lot. She gets an arc over the course of these 4 issues. She comes out the gate as a very believable antagonist, and she's drawn in a style of the times, but not the worst offender by far. So I really did think that a lot of this stuff was pretty solid. As far as a lot of the setup, I got to be honest with you. I read all these issues twice. I still don't know what the hell happens in this issue plot-wise. I don't know if that's just not the point. That's fine. It does look good, and I did enjoy flipping through. Silvestri's got a command of the page that, you know, obviously if his brothers are singing his praises, you know, I'll just join that chorus. But I enjoyed this issue. Like I said, I didn't read it when it came out, but it definitely made my week.
I wanted to kind of piggyback real quick off of just what you were saying, and then I'll turn it over to Dean. All these characters just showing up. I think a lot of these creators at the time probably felt pressure to begin this universe as quickly as they can and get as much out there as they can. So because they knew what kind of comes before. You got Marvel and DC who have this litany of characters, and now they're starting out, and we've got to start out from nothing. What can we do? I don't know if that's a detriment to the story, which, I mean, some could probably argue that, but I mean, as for the universe, I guarantee every single one of these characters that they were trying to create, they were like, okay, I've got an arc for this guy in the future. Psychotron's actually from Mars. It's going to happen. But, you know, there's probably going to be something later on down the line. I would imagine they had planned for all these guys. But yeah, it's like they were just trying to get as much out there as they can right at the beginning to let you know that, hey, our universe has been around for a little while and we have all of these characters. And this one is definitely representative of them packing it jam-packed full.
I mean, I think you're right. And I think most of them have said as much, that they're like, we felt like we had to get out there and make a big splash and things had to be familiar but different. I think that the first issue is wildly more or less the X-Men, the animated series opening. Like, just people show up, they do something cool, they say their name, you know, like you have like Cyblade, he's like, the guy's like, I'm not paid to think, and boom, blows him away. It's like, well, good, you know, because you didn't. Impact's like, put the gun away, dude. Somebody might get hurt after he runs to their van. Ripclaw jumps down. He's like, I'm Ripclaw, all that stuff. So the first issue is just a, you know, really, really quick and good introduction to, you know, the main team. You also get to see the Jet, you see Timmy, you see Chip. At the end, you know, you get the big shot of all the villains again. You know, when they come back, we told you we'd be back. It's wild to me how easily these people travel through New York City and just know where everyone is at any given time. I've been to New York City. It's hard to get anywhere. Like, you walk a block and somehow it's the hardest block you've ever walked in your life. You know, I mean, it's so good for them that they can do that. I found, you know, and I've read this a whole bunch, I found Mother May I to be more interesting this go round. I'm not sure why. Maybe I'm just, you know, it's finally sunk in. But no, I mean, these were two really, you know, solid issues, really letting you get to know these characters. I think that, you know, that like Wild Dairy, you know, you did say, you're like, oh, it's nice to see things new. It's new, but it's also very familiar. It's very,
sure.
You know, I mean, like, but I think the most egregious violation is Cyblade, who is really just Psylocke, like, for the most part. Like, egregious is a strong word, because I agree with you too, Jess. Like, he changed it just enough. You're like, okay, these are the GoBots, those are the Transformers. They're changed just enough to where I get the difference between them, you know, and, you know, you can go bigger than that. So I understand, you know, that while this is very X-Men-esque, it's I think, you know, we've done enough, you know, to make it. It's at least an Anthem movie or whatever. Is that who makes those movies? They make the movies like if Thor's in the theater, they make the Thor for sci-fi.
Oh.
And they made like Transmorphers when Transformers came out. Like, I can't remember their name. It's not Anthem. It's something like that, though. It's a fun couple issues. I think that things don't make a lot of sense sometimes, but it looks good enough to where I don't care. You know, just good memories for me, mostly just remembering how exciting all of this was when 7th grade and people were just like, you know, at school and talking about this stuff and going through this and even seeing the way the coloring worked and the page style. Like, a lot of us had never seen comic books that looked like that before.
Right.
You know, so this seemed like a more prestige as your product. So, you know, it was really fun. I think 1 was better than 2, but I do like them both. Also, like, yeah, so in 2, where like the gang shows up or whoever, you know, this like mercenary group, it starts to get unwieldy. There's, you know, I mean, there's a few too many guys. I don't know why Cyberdata, you know, like, they explained why Cyberdata hired them to steal the things so they can steal them back later. They'll make the mutants look bad. But, like, it seemed like a lot of work. Also, it seems like you just shouldn't let Velocity and like, Timmy, like, go to the store without, I don't know, like, Impact there or something. like, you know, she's being chased down and shit and all that stuff. And also, let me say, the character designs are crazy good. Like, Psychotron looks cool. Killjoy looks cool. Megawatt looks like a big old pile of electricity. Kilowatt was taken. Kilowatt was in the Teen Titans. Derry's real favorite team. And, you know, so I guess that was it. He was taken. But, like, all these guys look really good. It's a really and they look like they're a part of the world that they're inhabiting. the backgrounds and everything really combined with the characters to make you believe that this is a real world of sorts.
And the end of that second issue, 2 words: Enter Pitt. That's right. Here we go.
And I'm not talking about what was left of Pittsburgh in the new universe.
Oh.
See that reference? That's a reference right there, folks.
That was a layered reference. That was a lot going on there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know what? We'll get Jim Shooter on here to talk about him sometime.
If we got Jim Shooter on here, the episode would be 6 hours long, and it would just be him yelling at us.
If we got Jim Shooter on here, I'd only talk to him about Valiant, Defiant, and Broadway, and I'd really try and focus more on Defiant and Broadway because there's not a lot out there about those things.
There's really not. I want to know about Warriors of Plasma myself.
Well, of course, you would want to talk about that. Jesse would want to know why Cyberforce never gets started in Warriors of Plasma. That's fucking meta.
All right, the 10 Men of War, parts 3 and 4. We have Marc Silvestri, pencils, written by Eric Silvestri, inks Dan Panosian, Marc Silvestri, and Trevor Scott, letters by Mark Heisler, colors by Joe Chiodo. Part 4, same pencils, same story and script, except we've got Eric Silvestri, and on inks, we got Scott Williams. All right, here we go. Let's get into issues 3 and 4. But yeah, this is where things this was tough for me to write a synopsis on and have everybody understand what was going on.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. Before you get started on the synopsis, and I don't mean to interrupt, you can tell that this guy, Eric or Mark or the combination of them, that they want to tell that Chris Claremont depth story, but they don't know how to do it. And so all they know is to just add more and more and more stuff. These guys don't have the craft skill that Claremont would have at the time. Yeah, no, that's a really good point because there are what would be in an X-Men book. And again, this is where these guys are coming from. The A plot and the B plot and the C plot get slowly moved up and eventually intertwine over time. But this is a 4-issue miniseries, so you get entire plots in the span of a couple of pages, quickly jumping back and forth, and they go places, but they don't really have a lot of time to breathe in the way that Claremont was known for his drawn-out soap opera stuff. So, for example, you have Stryker dating Mother May I, or just he goes bodyguard on her. Yeah. He goes full fucking Kevin Costner, Whitney Houston style, right? He is, brown chicken, brown cow. But I feel like they were looking for something that, like you said, the space limitation also prevented it. But yeah, a lot of things happened really quickly. Like I said, I think all they knew to do was add more. Right. Volume isn't the same as depth. Isn't the same as texture. And I think that's all they knew was volume. And honestly, that makes for great visuals. That's part of what carries this whole thing. Anyhow, back to the pit. So sit back and, grab yourself a Coca-Cola or something, because I'm going to probably talk for a few minutes. So here we go, just so I can make sure we get everything out there and everybody knows what happens in these last 2 issues. So back to Velocity and Timmy. Cyberdata, S.H.O.C, Killjoy, Megawatt, and Psychotron have shown up demanding the data disks the thieves Splitzkrieg, Wildfire, and Slam have acquired. Like 2 megabyte disks. I know. There's a bit of a scuffle until finally Slam gives up the discs, which just so happened to have been eaten by Timmy. Killjoy is thrilled to see Velocity in the van and takes her and Timmy back to Cyberdata, imprisoning them. Velocity learns that she was once under the control of Cyberdata, and they have been brainwashing her to wipe her mind from remembering her past for some reason. Meanwhile, Chip calls Cyberforce to let them know Timmy and Velocity have not returned, so they track down their last location, the van the thieves held them in, arriving at their apartment. Unfortunately, Killjoy and the rest of the Cyberdata team are there waiting and instigating an ambush. Caught in the middle of this is the alien behemoth Pitt, who Slam allowed to sleep there. Slam allowed him to sleep there overnight. As fists fly, finally Pitt realizes who the real enemies are and turns the tide in Cyberforce's favor. Mother May I is able to extract the contents of the discs from Timmy and then leaves to address a hostage situation at a place where human mutant tensions are boiling. The name of this project is the Red Bay Housing Project. As she arrives, so does Stryker, who is able to gain her trust.
Rescuing the reporter who was taken hostage, Stryker follows Mother May I to a secret elevator in the project complex and heads below, where she greets a score of mutants, spurring rage and violence against the humans above ground. Stryker relays to Cyberforce that what he has learned. Mother May I has found out that Cyberdata was behind a plan to destroy the Red Bay housing project, so she's working for the people that were going to blow this place up. And now she is plotting revenge against her employer, Cyberdata. Her weapons? One of the data disks she got from Timmy has a virus that she will use to target the Manhattan power grid, plunging the city into chaos. Saburo Kamata finds out that Mother May I is betraying him and looks to dispatch Ballistic to take her down. But it is at that time that Cyberforce makes its move against Cyberdata. Also at this very moment, Stryker and Mother May I arrive at Cyberdata, and a large confrontation commences. Mother May I finds Kamata, but soon sees that Ballistic has Velocity at gunpoint. Stryker then appears, and a gunfight ensues. Kamata blasts Mother May I several times, but she attempts to influence Kamata to shoot himself. However, he is all out of bullets. Just then, a shock trooper has been ordered to take out everyone and launches a grenade that explodes, taking out most of the room. When Ballistic awakens, she is hanging from the side of a building, grasping onto Velocity's hand. Ballistic now remembers that she is Velocity's older sister, and Mother May I is their actual mother.
Actual mother.
Getting back.
What are the chances?
Getting back onto solid ground, Ballistic finds the gravely wounded Mother May I, who also recalls their relationship, and dies in her arms. Ballistic tells Stryker to take Velocity and leave. We end the book. Let's set up another series. We end the book where some time has passed. Stryker has a new team. His team of Black Anvil, Tempest, Killraiser, and, this is the 90s name generator, Bloodbow, are all looking to rescue young daughter.
Name generator.
Are looking to rescue the young daughter of a very wealthy man for a nice payday. His tales continue in Codename
Strike Force.
That is right. Whew.
Man,
I gotta take a drink because I talked for a long time.
I remember shitting on Codename Strike Force when it dropped. I was like, what the fuck's the point of this? What the fuck? What the fuck are we doing? Why do this is the same goddamn thing? And it's funny that for whatever reason I found this offensive in a way I did not find like multiple Spider-Man issues offensive or like Punisher. And I think it was because this whole thing is like, this is what Stryker does in his spare time. So the same goddamn thing he does all the fucking time? What the fuck are you talking about? If it was just like if they were like, oh, it's Cyberforce Adventures or whatever, fuck ever, or Cyberforce Files, and it was another Cyberforce title, I don't think I would have felt so insulted, but I was like, this is ridiculous.
Cyberforce Unlimited.
Yeah, it could have been. But I was just like, but don't sell me this shit that like somehow this is somehow super different. Oh man, I bet he shoots people with fucking pistols in each of his forearms and all of them. I bet they make the noise pa-chow, pa-chow, pa-chow because they're really into that onomatopoeia in this fucking thing. So anyhow, that's what I've never read Codename Strike Force for that reason. I should check it out, but something tells me it's just the fucking same.
I have quite a few issues of Codename Strike Force. Do I remember what happens in it? I do not. I do remember Black Anvil, though. I do remember
Black Anvil. He's
I'm
cool.
Remember.
Everybody else sucks.
All right.
I'm Bloodbow. My bow is bloody. Yeah.
First note, Pitt. All right. Pitt showing up in issue 3. Great. I'm just so excited. I love me some Pitt. I love when Pitt gets involved in things. I've watched Pitt battle Cyberforce now. I've watched him battle my favorite Image superhero, Supreme. There have been some good battles involving Pitt. He's definitely that Hulk-esque character of the Image universe.
Did he ever cross over with Hulk?
Yeah.
Like
yes.
Yeah.
There is. Yeah, there's a Hulk Pitt.
I haven't read it. I just have vague memories of it. I wanted to make sure that wasn't something I was making up.
No, Marvel wanted him back drawing Hulk as quickly as possible. So I bet they wouldn't now since he knocked that piss jar on himself, right?
Tell me what happened. I missed something. What are you
talking about? Dale Keown did a fucking one of those live stream things, and he's gone all comic skater, right? And so he was on, doing the live stream thing, and like he's saying things like Marvel raped the Hulk. They put a penis in his butthole and raped him and stuff. You're like, what the fuck does this even mean? Like, if you have a legitimate criticism of Hulk comics today, I guess that's fine. I don't know. I don't read them. I heard the Immortal Hulk was really good. I'll read it one day, probably in 2037, the way things are going. But like, he just went on and on. Well, he was like drinking, right? And like these people have like apparently piss jars for they're going to do big live streams, right? Well, he got hammered and like passed out on the live stream, and apparently as he was waking up knocked his piss jar on himself. So
what?
Yeah, this is on the fucking real. I've watched the live stream. Like, it is, I had to forward it because he's asleep for a long time, and it's like hilarious drunk guy. I didn't mean to pass out and sleep. And like his mouth is like open and he's cool. When he wakes up, he's like looking around like, what? You know what I mean? We've all been there because we went to college, but we also weren't like whining about some Comics Gate goddamn nonsense, knocked a piss jar on ourselves. So anyhow, I don't think Marvel would want him to draw the Hulk now. I think they're probably for that.
That is unfortunate.
It is, because he always seemed like a really neat guy. I know he like got a bunch of money and then apparently, spent it all on like studio equipment and shit. Apparently was, fairly talented in multiple ways. And the interviews I read with him and stuff, he always seemed like a nice guy. So it's unfortunate to see this happen. But, if you're going to go down the bigoted path, then I hope that path leads you to a piss jar and you knock it over on yourself.
Man,
back to Pitt!
Yes, Pitt showed up. Like I said, it's so funny that like this is how he gets brought in. Like he's just sleeping on the couch. Like of all the fucking random encounters, Pitt is sleeping on the couch. That's how this is going to go down. Like just so fucking random. It's cool to see him. It's cool to see Silvestri's take on him. I love seeing that. I have it written down here in my notes. Issue 4's gimmick cover.
Have y'all seen it in like bargain bins a lot?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It gets scratched up pretty easy. It's beautiful, but not durable.
No, it is not.
I'm looking at you, Eric Silvestri. I'm blaming you for that one. I don't fucking know. Come on, Easy. Take care of this.
This is a story that definitely could have used a couple more issues.
This was a 6-issue mini.
Absolutely. One of my notes here is like Stryker getting close to Mother May I felt like it was whoop like that, just like you said. That could have been probably drug out a little bit longer, and at least it would have maintained its believability. But it happened really. Also, really
like quick. You never see him tell Cyberforce. Like you just have to assume that like they know what he's doing. There's no like, hey, I know I'm the leader of this team, and I got all these arms. And so I should tell you what I'm doing, but I'm not gonna. Me and these arms are about to cartwheel right the fuck out of here and do whatever the fuck we want. Okay?
Like, they had a meeting at Cyberforce where it was like, who's going to lead us? Like, guy with the most arms is going to be the leader. I mean, that's what
Ripclaw and Cyblade were fighting about when Impact was like, it's like a dance. It's like I'm watching them dance as they sparred. Which, again, felt like some Claremont thing, the dance of death.
Oh, for sure. The quickest way to wrap up Velocity, Ballistic, and Mother May I mean, my gosh, was that something like, geez, what is going on here? I mean, it just happened all at once.
It makes you feel like the hospital that they blew up in Zero was General Hospital, because this is a soap opera now. And I'm not even mad about it, but it happens fast. But you can kind of see it coming the whole time. Not necessarily that Mother May I would be their mom, but that they were somehow intertwined. There's like art foreshadowing and stuff a lot of times. Like she's always like, I'm coming for you, Velocity. And there's kind of like a panel of them like looking at each other, and she's like, I told you we'll be back, Velocity, you'll never get away. And that was brutal when she like bullseye stabbed her in the leg with that thing, by the way.
So
I saw that coming, but that Mother May I would be their actual mother, that I didn't figure that out until like the last issue. I knew it before I saw it, but like I was like, oh, so that's where we're going. Also, Mother May I wearing like construction tape as her like fucking as her get up, so good for her. She could pull it off.
She could.
She keeps herself in shape. Don't hate a mother. Don't hate a mother who keeps herself in shape. She can put it out there.
That's
or if
correct.
one who doesn't keep himself in shape. Hey, love yourself how you are.
Yeah, got to plug that next book. I mean, we're going to plug. And what's strange is that we're plugging that and not like the ongoing, like or something along those lines. Hey guys, guess what? We'll be back, but no, check out further adventures in Codename Strike Force. I was like, oh,
well,
okay.
I'll have to go back and look, but I know this was late, so maybe it was just so late that Codename Strike Force was ready to go and the ongoing wasn't going to be, and so just plug this. That's a guess. I can't say for sure.
I mean, when you're reading this too, you're like, who the fuck are these guys? Like all of a sudden, it's like a totally different team. What's going on? What happened here? It's not like there was something where, Stryker's like, at least I don't remember him going, well, I'm done with this team. I'm starting my own. No, it's just like, hey, we're in a helicopter and here's all these new people.
I flipped through Codename Strike Force number 0, and apparently the people of Cyberforce have a problem with mercenary. Every time something disappears around here, you're about to go on a mission with your mercenary buddies. Remember the part 2 where like they were also like, he paid $10 million for this, $5 million more than they asked for to rescue his daughter because they're just gonna kill her, and we're the best. It's a book, and you know what? I'm gonna read it now.
Want to read it?
I'm gonna read it. I'm gonna find it on eBay, and I bet I can buy the whole run for I don't know $13.
We gotta find out.
And I will read it all, and I will do a book report on it.
Have you seen or do you recall how many issues are in Codename Strike Force? If not, I want you to guess right now.
18.
Okay. All right. And I feel like you're close. So let's just take a look. Codename Strike Force, ladies and gentlemen, comes in at 14 issues. Really close. Well, hey, you know what? You could get through that in about, I don't know, 2 days, right?
I can do that in an hour with this stuff. Like just looking for the gunshots. That's it.
I'm done talking. What are your notes there, Dean?
All right, so I've been reading this comic for 30 years actually now. Y'all were talking about how old kids can make you feel. Well, Cyberforce, apparently my kids, because now I feel fucking old. I've been reading it forever, and it took me forever. I was like, why is Mother May I and Cyberdata working together at all? I did not understand. And there's like one panel. I finally, I've skimmed over it forever. And Stryker's like, so why are you working with Cyberdata anyway? And she's like, I gave them the mutants. They gave me the money. And I was like, and that's all they say. And I'm like, you can extrapolate that. It's like, oh, she provided high-powered mutants for them to turn into S.H.O.Cs. That would work well for that because because if you're just like, fucking, I don't know, Mayor Tollbooth or whatever the fuck his name is, like with just use that blue skin, who gives a shit? Why would I make this guy a shock? On the other hand, if you have like an acid tongue, that's something that we could work with. You're like, oh, so you shoot daggers out of your ears. All right, well, let's do something, I get you're super strong. What the fuck? Since she had the mutant contacts, she would push them into that. And then she took the money to prop up political candidates, build grassroots mutant organizations, neighborhood coalitions, other kind of things, to where there would be a network. So when she was ready to make her final play with the virus, she had these zealots ready to go, people who, people who already believed in the cause, who had worked with it, who had seen this oppression, who had seen bad stuff happen, who had also had victories with it. So they just saw this as the next step. And I was like, oh, well, that all makes sense. Also tying into that, Mother May I's just sort of right. She's like, you guys treat us like shit. We'd like to have our own autonomous zone where we can rule ourselves. Yeah, yeah. It's a Magneto move. Magneto May I, am I right? You should have seen Jesse's face. Looked like he swallowed a harmonica. I just think that it's a Magneto move. I support Magneto. She's right. They'll never be able to trust the government of the United States, the state of New York, or the city of New York, no matter how many mutants get involved in that government, because it's systemically against them. Just like we have a systemically racist government, a systemically sexist government, systemically homophobic, etc. And you can't fix that by just putting those minorities in there because the system is already made. You have to undo those elements of the system in order to make that make that oppression go away. I think she's right. I don't know that she should shut down all of the fucking power in Manhattan to do this. But I do think her end goal is correct, and I don't know. Historically, every minority group, every freedom movement has had to break some eggs to make this omelet. This may be too big of an egg, but like, I don't think that she's, necessarily wrong.
He was already a senator. There is
what's your point? That doesn't, I just talked about systemic oppression.
There's a storyline in the Top Cow universe that has yet to be told where a mutant with blue skin was on the floor of the U.S. Senate.
Yeah, that's good.
They
stole it for X-Men 3.
Genosha doesn't work. Krakoa doesn't work. Like, that's the point of the dream, is you have to put yourself out there. You have to integrate. Like, they say there's hundreds of mutants living in New York. That's more than there ever were in the X-Men comics. That's Mutant Town. That's Day of X thing. Like, if you told me that they were going to form their own little community in one of the boroughs, it'd be like, yeah, that would make sense. We got all these other communities. Why not you guys? Like, violence is terrible and they should do everything to prevent that. But it's like, I don't necessarily agree with the way she's going about her things here. And also, she's willing to sell her own people out to an obviously evil company so they can get not only mind controlled, but mind wiped and sent after killing other people.
She's a bad person. Magneto's not great, but she's right about this. In that, like, before, you're not wrong. I get what you're saying, but you can't just be like, oh, well, now we'll have black people or gay people or women be a part of this apparatus, and now the apparatus will ensure freedom. We have built systems that result in that oppression. We have to change those systems, and usually that winds up with having to build power separate from the system so that power gets so big that the system has to respond to it and evolve. You're right. The end goal shouldn't just be Asteroid M. The end goal isn't Krakoa. The end goal shouldn't be whatever this autonomous mutant zone would have looked like. But that's usually how things sort of have to start for minorities to get genuine political power and to get the oppression within the system purged as much as it can be. And then, rinse, repeat, because you get so far, there's pushback, etc. But I don't disagree with you. I don't know that this is going to get what she wants. And I still don't know why she felt like she had to work with Cyberdata, or had to, like, burn down the orphanage where her kids were, like all this weird shit, She's certainly an evil person. I like Magneto a lot more, who also has his problems. But I do agree with her, and I do think that minorities have to fight back, and they have to establish zones where, like, they can feel safe before they can make the existing system safer for them. But you're right. Like, how is this? Oh, I'm going to turn off all the power in Manhattan. So what's your end game?
Yeah,
here? Like,
see, that seemed like a stretch.
Where are you going to live then? What's your deal? That's
she's
why,
got
like,
a third eye, bro. A third eye. We don't know what that eye does. Her superpower is to make anyone think that she's her mom. So is she actually Ballistic and Velocity's mom?
Ooh.
Or no? Because I was like, is that just catharsis? I couldn't, like, is she an alien? Why does she look so different than everyone else?
I think she is their mom because, like, she mentions the fire that she sets at the orphanage, which is in Velocity's memory.
Right? Couldn't she have just, like, I'm not saying
I guess she could have stolen it because they had all of Velocity's memories and shit, so you're right.
I think the intent was that she is their mom because you see the mom throughout the course of all 4 issues. I'm not trying to second guess anything. I'm just saying that the character's, like, main gimmick seems to be that she makes everyone think that she is their mother. So I just thought it was funny that ostensibly the 2 main characters, or 2 of the main characters, this literally is their mom. I thought that was funny. I just wanted someone to, like, point out and be like, wait a second, are you actually their mom? Or is this just like, you saw an opportunity and you're taking it to women who have been, like, psychologically abused and in at least Velocity's cases, like, physically abused, to give them catharsis so they can move on with their life. Again, that was one of the things I liked about it is I keep thinking about that moment. You can't say that for a lot of comics from this period, certainly from the other Image guys, but I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that arc. I think Ballistic is a particularly good character.
I think the other thing I was going to say, because I did mention the Dale Keown thing. Oh boy, Pitt is a guy who, like, very, like, I've read several Pitt comics, and, like, I don't think any of them are good. But like, I don't care. I've seen a lot of Sid Vicious matches, and I don't think any of them are good, but I still love Sid Vicious, and Pitt is like that for me. I wish we would see more Impact. I think he has a very interesting look for such a big guy, and all I ever remember him doing is running through cars in this miniseries and getting like just fucking grotesquely killed in one of the death maids.
Oh, that's right. I remember that. Yeah. I was just looking it up. There was a Darkness Pit crossover at one point.
Yes, there was. Yes, there was.
Apparently that happened in 2009.
Yeah, that was more recent than you'd think.
There was a Pit Kickers Incorporated crossover, I believe. Tom DeFalco and Dale Keown, I believe.
Yeah,
really?
That was during Devil's Reign.
Yeah, I think that's right. Right. It
was part of Devil's Reign.
Look at it. It was only released in the Philippines. You probably won't be able to find much about it. You probably, you know.
I don't believe a damn thing you guys are saying.
I'm an expert on this. I'm quoted in the book.
Oh, okay. All right. You're right.
It's 2 new universe jokes in one podcast. I hope everyone listening at home is appreciating that.
Hot damn.
Yeah. I don't know that these issues have ever been collected, so I don't know anyone out there who's going to read them who doesn't already have them. They are a good story. They're very much of the time. They're very confusing. There are cameos that don't go anywhere, but it's very interesting to read about a fully formed, fully realized world and meet everyone in the middle of the story. You know, you are not walked through anyone's origin. You know, Dean mentioned earlier that it's essentially Night of the Sentinels. And if you're going to crib from the best, you know, Velocity is very clearly Jubilee. There's nothing wrong with that. Jubilee is clearly Kitty Pryde, who's clearly a Marvel girl. You know, all good stories have a POV character. I don't know if it was Eric Silvestri or Marc Silvestri who actually sat down and was like, listen, we are going to make sure that there's a story here, but they accomplished that. Like, you get your 3-act structure. It's not perfect. It's very much of the time. It's very much a freshman offering, but it's not bad. And it really is beautiful to look at, especially if you like Silvestri. And I like his art very much. So I really did enjoy reading these. Like I said, I hadn't before. The other thing that's interesting about Cyberforce is, you know, Marc Silvestri only 4 or 5 years later would hit the jackpot with Witchblade. You know, she became a TV character. She was published forever. There might still be a Witchblade book coming out now. I'm not 100% sure. But he would never let Cyberforce fully rest. Like, these characters have had like 5-6 volumes. They're not quite Spawn and Savage Dragon. I don't know if they're still being published. But he kept trying to go back to the well of, like, you know, there are humans, they are augmented, they are different. What does that mean? He did a bunch of different series. One was with Mark Waid called Hunter Killer, which kind of brought in some of these concepts. And he's always trying to bring them back. And I really do appreciate that, because, again, it's not just I threw out one thing, it didn't work, and I moved on to the next thing. It's like, well, I moved on to the next thing, and that was successful, but I want to see if I can keep finding the key with this original concept. And then the other thing in general I love about Top Cow is every year they do a talent hunt where they try to give people who've never been published or published only in very small and obscure places the chance to write one of their books. And they've gotten a lot of great creators and great concepts from that. So just in general, I'm a fan of Top Cow. I can't say I read all their books. A lot of their stuff covers stuff I'm not interested in. But in general, I got a lot of their stuff. And whenever I see Silvestri or Hawkins' names in an interview, I'll definitely click on it. So I would say if you have the chance, read these. They're not bad.
It was collected at the time. There's a 4-issue trade paperback from then. And like, I think last year they did a Kickstarter that like, you got like all these, you got all the volume 1, the mini and volume 1. I don't know if you got past that, but you also got like a shirt with the first cover and like a whole bunch of like, you know, tchotchkes and what have you, which I couldn't get it at the time, but I'm thinking about getting that compilation. So it has been collected. These books aren't hard to find either, you know, as far as like, they don't go for a ton of money. If you do find them at this point, probably $10 for number 1, and then like, you know, going down from there.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
I will tell you that
it's a great series. It's a really fun story. You really can't go wrong. And even the parts where it doesn't make as much sense or it gets kind of dense, it's still always fun to look at. And you know, I really enjoyed this, but I really hope that Jesse enjoyed it, because this is his day.
I did. I loved it. Thank you guys for reading this along with me and talking about it as well. Cyberforce X-Men came out in 07.
2007. Yeah.
Man, and I'm looking at the cover.
They'd have printed money with that in like 90.
Oh, you have any idea? My gosh. On the front of the cover of this book, Ripclaw and Wolverine. Behind Ripclaw sits Cyblade, and on the other side of Wolverine, Psylocke. Believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen,
it's hard to see.
Pat Lee art. I mean, unbelievable.
The greatest creator of his generation, Patrick Joseph Lee. I love that man. I love that man so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Cyberforce, our discussion of Cyberforce 0 through 4. We've had a good time here this evening, so let's go ahead. We'll get into plugs. Let's hear it, Dean Compton. Let's talk about the Unspoken Decade and where you hang your hat and what's going on over there.
All 90s all the time, theunspokenDecade.com. We're doing stuff on Facebook, and we're on Twitter at Unspoken Decade. I've got my keyboard swapped out, so I'm going to start doing the cards again. So finally, I spilled cherry Coke like twice on my keyboard. In like a span of like 3 hours. I hadn't done it in like 25 years. And so, you know what I mean? Like fucking, that's math for you, right?
Right, dude.
So like I had to get a new keyboard. We've got that installed now. So I'm going to go back to the 91 cards here soon now that I can type easily again. But yeah, it's always a good time. It's always 90s comics. We'd love to hear from you. Love to hear what you think about these podcasts as long as it's positive.
Yeah. Make sure it's all good. Look. Right here, you're listening to this podcast on the Source Material Comics feed. And recently, you can hear myself on the Source Material Comics podcast run down a comic called Chikan, the Forever Man. And then right at the end of that, after you hear me talk about the comic and the experience I had reading it, you can listen to me experience the hour-and-a-half gameplay of Chikan, the Forever Man from the game on the Sega Genesis. Now, mind you, I cut all the awkward silence out. So what was an hour and a half becomes a half an hour of me going, oh, what is that? Ow! How did he make that jump? Most recent episode that we released from the Unspoken Issues podcast, Matthew Price was on, and we talked one-shot, grifter, solo issue, setting up everything for what's coming in the ongoing after that. That was a good one. So check that out.
Good times, great oldies.
That's right. That's right. A lot of Brian Bosworth references. That's Derry Waite. That's Dean Compton. I'm Jesse Starcher. Thank you very much for joining us. We will talk to you soon. Have a good one. Bye-bye. Thanks for joining us. Unspoken Issues is part of the UnspokenDecade.com, the home for 90s comics, blogs, and podcasts. Unspoken Issues also has a Facebook group you can join if you are interested. Just search the Unspoken Issues podcast and request to join. All of this would not be possible without W2Mnet.com and the Rattlich and Broadcasting Network, so make sure to seek them out for more podcasts. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please feel free to share, and we look forward to entertaining you again soon.